If any of you have been living anywhere near the 21st century, you know that recently one of the Battlefield devs said that they didn't release as many maps as we would like, which is 3 or 4 like they used to do in the DLC map packs, because of the simple fact that they want to produce quality over quantity. I think we can all sniff BS better than we ever have, and that sounds like a load of it. But it does bring up the question: how can we incentivize EA to produce more maps? There seems to be a conflict between what the players want, which is more permanent content, less LTMs, less skins, less stuff that we get less value from, but very clearly it keeps getting pushed in our faces because they're making a boatload of money off of it. So where did that disconnect happen? With the old DLC system, we got 4 maps, usually, some actually had 5, some guns and some vehicles, and it was on a consistent cadence. They told us what we were gonna be given beforehand. They promised X amount of content, and now X amount of content was being delivered. The live service model basically removes that promise. So we can essentially get anything, and there's no accountability from that front. But in reality, if the traditional map pack system was making more money, they wouldn't have pushed away from it. The market with Fork Knife and other live service games like that essentially showed all companies what the income potential was, because there's now recurring revenue at any cadence that the company so chooses. But we as players understand that we don't come back for camos. If a new camo is released, that's not going to incentivize you to come back and play a game that you don't enjoy. We need substance. I made a video about this, link in the corner. But maps, staying in the game makes you come back. 4 new maps, most Battlefields released with either 8 or 9 maps, and 4 new maps a season is half of the maps. That means that every 3 to 4 months, you basically got half the maps. Every 6 months, you got twice the content in the game. And by the end of its life, it had 3 times the amount of content that it had in it originally. That's basically 3 games. We don't get that anymore. But it clearly makes less money. How do we convince the EA executives and the employees that are at EA to produce more of the maps? And here's the thing that most people don't understand is most of the people that work at EA are employees. Yes, they are professionals, but the game developers make the game. The people that work in marketing make the marketing material. The people that work in the corporate office understand the sales and distribution of the product. There's a bunch of people that do a bunch of different things, but all of them are employees. None of them are trendsetters, right? That is why Battlefield is following trends. Before, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, they weren't particularly following trends. They were making their own thing. This was the original group of people that created the game. They were doing it out of passion. They were making something that they wanted to make. Now, the group of people that is in charge of this game are making something that's going to sell well. Therefore, they have to play it safe. They cannot take excessive risks. They don't want to flop. And being a trendsetter is very potentially flopping. So they're going to copy what's working. They're going to copy the hero shooters in 2042. They're going to copy the other games. It's just the nature of business. It's the same thing with Call of Duty. They're not going to be trendsetters because everyone could lose their job if you set the trend incorrectly. But we still need to be able to communicate with these people and show them that what we come for is substance. That is maps, vehicles, and guns. How do you communicate with an executive whose job it is to make more money and an employee whose job it is to do what the executive wants, because that's who pays their bill? I can't do this because I don't have the numbers, but essentially what we need to do is show the correlation between the live service models and sales, but specifically the contradiction between player counts when maps are released and when maps are not released. So, using Battlefield 6 as an example, Season 1 and Season 2 are going to follow the same trend, so we're going to do this way. Battlefield players come back to play Battlefield, to play a new map, to use new guns. So, if the returning player count at Season 1 at the beginning, had a new map, is larger, and you get more sales based on that map, then the second part of Season 1 comes out. There was also a new map, new camos, new things. More players, more player engagement, more maps equals more players, which equals more things purchased. Now, if the third part of Season 1 and the third part of Season 3 produce less sales than the second and first part of the seasons, both of which did not have maps, that being the third part, here's a discernible trend. Now, I don't have internal access to this. I don't know what it is, but player count on the third part of Season 1 and the third part of Season 3, I don't need to see it. What's going to happen is we're not going to get as many players on. We're not going to have as many people in lobbies. They're not going to have as many sales. There needs to be a direct correlation with map release and camo purchases, right? The incentive for the company is purchasing camo. Whether you want it or not, it's there. That's how they make their money. That's how a bunch of companies make their money now. Because it's an easy asset, it's something that doesn't take a lot of work, and that's where they're spending a lot of their resources. Making camo, yes, it's a different team, but it requires less people doing less things, and you can sell it a lot more largely in terms of volume, whereas a map requires a lot more resources. So the example that I've been given is making camos, making skins, is essentially working a 10-hour week to make $1,000. That is camo, skins, cosmetics. Making a map, it is a different team, but it is essentially the same thing as working a 40-hour work week for that same $1,000, right? With maps, the income is set. You have a certain amount of map pack. You do not excel. You cannot make more money than that map pack demands. So even if you sold one map pack to every single player, you could not sell 5 map packs to every single player if there was only 2 in existence. They make 4 map packs. The maximum you can do is every single player buys the 4, which isn't real. But with camos, you have the possibility of making 5 or 6 different options, and even if one player doesn't get anything, there's going to be another player that gets 2 or 3. So therefore, theoretically, you have a larger potential for income. That is why camos and cosmetics are being made. There's a larger potential for income. But if there's a way to prove that maps create a more consistent player base, which is true, we inherently as players see it. But if someone in EA can form this relationship and show that when a map is released with cosmetics, the cosmetics sell more often because there's now more players online playing, which means more customers, then we'll get more maps. Somebody has to make that correlation. But as of right now, the previous map pack system was removed because there isn't that correlation. I can't see it. I can't make it. I'm just a player. I inherently understand the fact that if a camo comes out, I'm not going to turn the freaking game on. And if a new map comes out, I am 100% going to turn the game on. But the maps are no longer being monetized. So if there's anybody out there that listens to this, that works at EA, that may be in corporate, that may be in tech, understand maps, vehicles, guns is what we come for. The longer we play, the more maps we get, the more vehicles we get, the more guns we get. The more often we play, the more and longer we play, and the more likely we are to buy the incentives, right? I understand that maps are free, and that's part of the model. You give the map for free, and then you get cosmetics. I get the model. I get it. More maps is more cosmetic purchases. More maps is more money. Let the third part of Season 1 and let the third part of Season 3 be the proof in the pudding. If sales increase in the first part and second part of each season and they decrease for the third part of each season, it's not because it's the end of the season. It's the maps. More players online, more eyeballs to see your product. And if you were to think about it as a user base, an eyeball sales, an advertisement, which is literally what it is. You put on a map, you have people that log on because the map comes on. You have friends that see that their friends are on and they come on because their friends are on. And there's also a benefit of a new map. It's a cascading effect. We're seeing it right now with Season 2. We had an average of 40 to 50,000 players on Steam for the past 2 to 3 months. And the new map comes out and that instantly jumped by 30,000. I promise you, if you would have released the operations mode without the new map or the LTMs alone without the new map, the player increase does not happen. The money in terms of spending the $40 or spending the 40 hours for the $1,000 is what gets you the $1,000 in the 10 hours. The maps need to be there. And a bunch of people agree. Watch, look at the comments down below. Appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe for more stuff just like this. And if not, watch this one.